Hi, this is Steve Buscemi, the actor. Well, now I'm an actor and podcast host. From Piece of Work Entertainment and Campside Media in association with Olive Productions comes Big Time, an Apple original podcast. Each episode follows the story of one misfit with big dreams who isn't afraid to bend a few rules or take a shortcut to get there.
Well, who steals bees?
I was duped.
I shoot you in the leg.
This is Big Time. Follow and listen on Apple Podcasts.
Instacart is here to keep you on the couch this basketball season. With pre-game rituals and post-game interviews, it's hard to find time for everything else. Let Instacart handle your game day snacks or weekly restocks with delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Because it's bad luck to be hungry on game day. Download the Instacart app today and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply for 3 orders in 14 days. Excludes restaurants.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, it's the most thought-provoking question of the Charles Manson case. How did he convince his followers to kill on his behalf? Did he get help from LSD and a secret government program? We'll talk about the documentary Chaos, The Manson Murders from Netflix. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca. I'm so glad you're feeling better.
Thank you for nursing me through my darkest hour.
Yeah, you didn't have neurovirus, but you got food poisoning.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec.
All right.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of the Piper Green series of cozy mysteries, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca. Yeah, I'm sad it happened in my territory, but we'll talk about it in a minute.
And finally, our resident Doubting Thomas, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Rip Current, Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin, this is Thursday's program.
It is.
What's coming up on Monday's show?
So on Monday, we're going to talk about the podcast from Tenderfoot TV. It's called Crook County.
I've been hearing a lot of ads for that in other podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
It was my dad.
Oh, no, did you spoil it?
He literally says that in the ad in the other podcast. There's a lot of new genre of podcasts, as someone pointed out to me on Blue Sky, that's like boys trying to get the approval of their weird dads. It's like a genre now, right?
Yeah.
So, Kevin,
Yeah.
thank you for A, saving my life, B, keeping me alive, and C, putting up with me being useless, literally, for 2.5 days because I got poisoned. I hope you were not the one who poisoned me, just for fun for all this.
Just for fun, just because it'd be a good podcast? No, so guys, we have friends. Well, I mean,
Amy and Alex.
And there is this really cool oyster house in Portsmouth. We all ate there. About a year ago.
Yeah.
And it's closing. And so it's one of their favorite places. We had to run an errand on the seacoast anyway. And they said, come on over. And before they close, we'll sit there, we'll get a bunch of oysters. So we got 24 oysters and a couple other things to eat.
Oh.
We got drinks. We each had 2 cocktails and 6 oysters.
6 bites of food.
And
there's a lot of fries, too.
Yeah, there were a lot of fries. So not a lot. It was fun. And then we went to a Chinese restaurant.
That was in my territory, that Chinese restaurant.
We got sushi. So I'm not blaming the oysters necessarily.
Well, everybody had that sushi.
What oyster place did you go to?
We went to the Franklin, which is closing. So they can't sue me for saying this. No, I want to say this. All 4 of us ate all the food.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only one who got sick. It was one bad bite, I believe.
Yeah.
Although, on the way back, Kevin had to pull over twice on Route 101 in New Hampshire so I could get sick. And it was so... Did someone try to help us at one point or ask us a question? I barely remember this.
Oh, yeah, I pulled off. I just happened to be going by an exit ramp. And so I zooped down bottom of the exit ramp. You tried to... Remember we went shopping right before we had... oysters.
Yes.
And we went to this kitchen store.
I bought a meat tenderizer.
Yeah, it was in a little bag. And you instead of throwing up on the floor of your new car.
I love my car. I love my car too much for that.
In your handbag, you took the shopping bag.
Tiny little shopping bag.
And threw up all over the meat tenderizer.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God.
And then Kevin had to pull over and I heard somebody, and I just looked like a drunk girl, right? I look like a drunk girl.
Well, I mean, did you see a car on the side of the road with the lights flashing? And this young couple These teenagers with Maine license plates came down and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I gave the thumbs up and I just said, "Too much St. Patrick's Day."
Oh, no.
Well, at the time, no, it didn't occur to
Fucking A.
At first, you're like, "Oh, I got to roll the window down." You thought maybe you had too much to drink.
But I knew I didn't.
No.
I had 3 drinks over like 5 hours.
Yeah, you had 2.5 drinks, so like maybe that's a lot.
It's a lot,
I'm not saying
but
that's
it's not a lot.
But that's not. We have to immediately pull over so you can vomit.
No,
a lot
that's
of
just
alcohol.
like I have a headache maybe the next day.
So
situation.
basically, we were playing Russian roulette with these oysters.
Oh, God.
And the takeaway for me is maybe don't buy oysters from an oyster restaurant that's closing.
She's got to clear out their
It's like
stock.
a flash sale.
Yeah,
It was
Usually
funny. There was
usually
one
give it a little
moment-
sniff right before you put it on the.
There
once
was
you
one
shuck it.
moment where Kevin asked for like a specific kind of booze to make a drink, and he was like, "Oh, we're actually out of that. We're like running out of things because we're closing." Remember that happened at the oyster place? And I was like, "Yeah, you guys out of Coke too? Like, what else are you out of?" Apparently, but I don't. You know what? I don't want to. Sometimes you get food poisoning, and it is literally nobody's fault. Like, I actually believe that in this case. It's probably easier to blame the sleazy restaurant that served the sushi.
I
than
think
it is.
I would blame that place because I was like, oh, look, they're at the place in my town and
But
they're
we all
talking
ate the
about me.
sushi.
That's so nice.
We all
and
ate
then
that
Rebecca
roll,
gets
yeah.
sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
That place is known for some situations, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was her second stop. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I still had fun, except for the way home, and then the next 2 days were horrible.
Oh,
but
God, that's horrible.
yeah, food poisoning is the worst. Toby, I thought I had neurovirus maybe, and I was like, please no, it wasn't that clearly, but it's the worst because it moves through your body.
Mm-hmm.
First you have it in the top part of your body, and then you have it in the bottom part of your body. It's the worst.
Yeah. My son had this, like, he got really sick like last Wednesday. And I was in my room going, oh, please don't let him have norovirus like Toby's family. Please don't let him have the norovirus like Toby's family. And it was just food poisoning. But his cleared
Thank
much
God.
quicker than yours. Yeah.
Yeah. No
Yeah.
good. All right. Well, Kevin.
Yeah.
Now that we've gotten that out.
Oh, good one,
And then
Rebecca.
it came up.
Yes.
And yes.
Thank you for nursing me and giving
now that
me
we've
all the...
expelled that.
Thanks for giving me all the glasses of apple juice that I could possibly have wanted, since it was the only thing I could keep down. I appreciate you. Should we go ahead and talk about the totally non-gruesome thing we're about to talk about?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Leading off.
It's one of the scariest true stories out there about an 8.5-month pregnant, beautiful woman getting stabbed to death while she pleads for the life of her baby.
The 1969 Manson family killings gripped the nation for their sheer brutality and madness. But left unanswered is exactly how Charles Manson turned a group of hippies into assassins through mere persuasion. The book Helter Skelter says Manson convinced its followers of an impending race war, one they needed to be at the center of.
I think the girls might have believed in Helter Skelter. They might have been doing it because that's what Charlie told them. If that's the case, then he successfully brainwashed them into believing it. But I don't believe that's why Charlie did it. I believe there was another motive, another reason.
But journalist Tom O'Neill uncovered loose connections between Manson and the head of the CIA's secret program MK-Ultra. He says the Manson murders read less like a spree killing and more like the LSD-fueled mind control experiments the government had been perfecting.
Super secret Project MK-Ultra was carried out by the CIA from 1953 to 1964. It proved to be one of the most bizarre episodes in CIA history.
From Oscar winner Errol Morris and Netflix comes Chaos, the Manson Murders. The director of The Thin Blue Line and Wormwood returns to the subject of MK-Ultra, exploring whether it can be blamed for the famous crime spree. Was Manson really a failed musician turned cult leader, or did he get help from an infamous Cold War program? Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about plot points from Chaos, the Manson Murders. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Additional note, I am the host of the Netflix podcast You Can't Make This Up, and it was my privilege to interview Errol Morris about Chaos. However, I promise this has not influenced my review. And Kevin, we should probably be even more transparent and say, if I didn't like something I did on the Netflix podcast, we're probably not doing it on this show.
The non-review is the review.
Exactly.
All right, okay.
Exactly. Or, you know, it's maybe a sideways or whatever. But anyway, so Laura, Tom O'Neill is sort of like his storytelling, his theory is at the center of this show.
Right.
And what do you think of him being at the center of this in many ways?
I kind of wish he had been a little bit more at the center, actually, to be totally truthful with you. He was an interesting character. You know, he's this journalist who was thinking he's going to do like a short-term project. And then years later, he's now down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole of what actually might have happened with Manson.
When I started suspecting there was a possibility of MK Ultra involvement in this case, when I found out that he'd been at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic working with these people who had contact with Manson during the time Manson became exactly what the CIA was trying to create, programmed assassins.
Speaking of at the center, they did this thing with some of the lighting, like a lot of the times when they're filming him, where it looked like he was like the angel coming down, like he had like this like white light like shining brightly over his head. For me, the reason I say I would like to have him more at the center is I think the fact that he got so immersed in it that he spent all this time researching and writing and going down these other paths of what may or may not have happened, because I think that's what everyone wants to know. Because for me, there were parts of this that I was like, okay, we've all, not to like diminish the crime, but like we know the story of Charles Manson. We know the story of the victims. And I felt like what would have been more fresh was if it was just focused on this guy, because it was, but it could have been, I think, even more so following his just peculiar path that he took and like a little bit more about him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we should just be clear. MK Ultra was real. It really happened.
Yeah.
And it's my opinion, and Toby, I don't know what you think. This documentary isn't so much like trying to convince us of that as it is Errol Morris talking to someone who is convinced of that. You know, he's transparent about the fact that he has doubts that this is the case. But at the same time, O'Neill isn't exactly saying Manson, he became an assassin and the government wanted Sharon Tate dead. What he's saying is that the program succeeded because if Manson were part of it, he did become someone who could convince other people to kill people. So what do you think of this whole idea of this documentary? Is it at heart like a lot of gray area?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I listened to the book Chaos on tape, and this is just a part of the book. Like the book is wild. Like if you're into Manson stuff at all, like it goes into all kinds of stuff. It's basically trying to refute Bugliosi's theories about a lot of stuff.
Bugliosi, the author of Helter Skelter and Charles Manson's prosecutor, right?
And you see him in the actual show too. I think it's an interesting theory that Tom O'Neill has. I mean, I think you can explain this sort of control over people without MK Ultra. As a matter of fact, I think the only thing that really distinguishes the Manson family from a whole bunch of different cults and religions and other kinds of things in which there is control, whether coercive or not, is just the brutality of the murders. Mm-hmm. But you can look at Jim Jones and people were drinking Flavor Aid that they knew was poisoned to kill themselves, right? And that was like 900 people. In some ways, it looks like he's trying to find a more conspiratorial, extreme explanation than is necessary. And I think that's what Errol Morris kind of tells him at the end, is that this just feels like it's unnecessary to go quite this far with things. That being said, it's kind of fun. I mean, I'm not saying the Manson stuff is fun, but this idea that he's like connecting all these dots and doing this research to give it like a factual underpinning. I mean, that's what I liked about the book. Like at the end of the book, you're not like, my view of all this stuff has changed, but it's like, wow, this guy is totally obsessed. He's done all this work and he's come up with this kind of interesting theory, which even though I don't necessarily agree with, is kind of compelling just to kind of see how he went about it.
Yeah. So Kevin, one quick note. Charles Manson was kind of a good singer, yes or no? Sorry, I didn't mean to be flip, but we got some singing in here that I was not expecting.
Yeah. Well, thank you for jumping me to that. We'll skip right over MK Ultra.
I'll come back to that.
Oh, okay, super. Yeah, I will say that his singing voice, in my opinion, was surprisingly good. I could definitely hear him singing like 1950s, middle of the road standards.
Or 60s folk music.
There's a time for living. The time keeps on flying. Think you're loving, baby, and all you're doing is crying.
The songwriting, like this acoustic guitar arrangement, I mean, certainly doesn't sound like anything anyone in 1969 would see as fashionable or commercially successful. But yeah, like the tenor of his voice was like, oh, okay. It's interesting because it's part of the lore that he was, he got involved with Dennis Wilson from the Beach Boys and he washed out.
He's obsessed with the Beatles.
Yeah, right. So it's like he was a bad musician. And again,
You're not that bad.
I mean, as far as like playing the acoustic guitar, I don't know. The songwriting, I'd have to listen to more. But when you hear his voice, I'm like, okay, that's actually not bad. And I love that they had this LP with Manson's creepy photo on the cover.
Yeah.
And
Errol Morris said it was real.
yeah, I mean, what can you say? It's pretty funky.
It is funky. Well, so back to MK Ultra, Kevin, because that is what this is about, right? You know that MK Ultra was real, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure it was.
No, yeah.
But it has been tied now to Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and now Charles Manson, right? What do you think about this idea that MK Ultra could be at the center of so many different things? Is that a possibility?
Well, I mean, it's fascinating because just the fact that it is so fantastical, yet it actually happened, means that you could sort of apply it to just about anything, right? I mean, it's kind of like QAnon, like...
Except that's not real.
Except that's not real. But then you get something like, all these rich people are going to do this thing. But then you get like Jeffrey Epstein. And you're like, oh, shit. Well, like it doesn't prove QAnon, but it certainly gives those people something to latch onto. In some ways, like MK Ultra is like that. It's like, oh, maybe Jamie from Adolescence took LSD. Anybody, you could like throw that in as an explanation for just about anything, including Jack Ruby taking out Lee Harvey Oswald or whatever. It makes for an interesting thought experiment, but it's just, to me, it's so broad that it can be weaved into any conspiracy. But yeah, it's true. They definitely tried this. And as we remember from Wormwood, which also came from Errol Morris and was, again, sort of this genre-breaking thing where you had documentary interviews run alongside not just recreations, but like a whole dramatic telling of a kind of story with well-known actors. Comes back to this thing about MK Ultra. It really is fascinating. But I don't know, that doesn't necessarily mean it applies to anything.
I love Errol Morris's filmmaking because it is so dry. Like it is, like even Wormwood, which was full of, you like just described it, you made it sound like Alice in Wonderland, right? But that was dry in many ways. It was a series, right? Wormwood, or was it a film? I don't remember.
It was a series. It was pretty long.
Yeah, it was long, but it was also like, I love that he does not shy away from the starkness and the dryness of just him sitting on a couch talking to somebody with multiple cameras around. You get the sense that they're just alone having a conversation that we might want to hear. And it's in the hands of a less skilled filmmaker would be incredibly boring. And it might not be for everybody, but he does have a style, even though the things he makes are so different from each other. But Laura, one of the things that we hear here, we hear a lot of tape, a lot of archival tape, and this tape has been played in other contexts before, but it's interesting, I think, to hear it all together, is we hear some of the Manson family, the women, talking about actually doing the murders, and they sound like they didn't do anything wrong, right?
Yeah, that was fascinating to me because I felt like all these years later, you might tell this with some sort of remorse or emotion about what happened, but you have various women that are discussing their roles in these murders. And at one point you have the woman who talks about, like, they said, well, the other person had stabbed the person, and they said, but Charlie wants you to get your hands dirty too. So then she stabs the person like 11 times in the back. And it was like no remorse about that.
And I was left sitting with Sharon Tate, and she was talking to me, and I remember that I felt nothing. I felt absolutely nothing for her as she begged for her life and for the life of her baby.
The way that they did the recreations on that, I thought was really interesting. They would show sort of that anatomical drawing like you would see if you were reading like an autopsy medical examiner report. And for each like stab that the person's describing, there was like that little sound effect that was just like...
Yes. Oh, with the little drawings. I like the way that was done, honestly.
I thought it was really effective, but it was like listening to that and watching that and just seeing like the amount of stab wounds that was inflicted, but hearing it just described in this clinical, detached way while accepting responsibility for it, but really not showing a lot of regret about their role in this was amazing to me.
Well, you know what you won't have regrets for, Kevin, is joining our Patreon.
Oh, no,
Good
that's
one,
true.
Rebecca.
Thank you, Laura, for teeing that up so easily. Now we're in the business section.
Yeah, if you join us at patreon.com/partners in crime media, you get all sorts of exclusive stuff like Charles Manson sing-along.
Ooh.
No, that's not true. Exclusive content like the Crime Writers on After Show, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, our advice podcast, Married with Podcast, and Rebecca's Readathon based on the Karen retrial, and the lead investigator, the disgraced lead investigator, Michael Proctor. What happened to him?
He was dismissed dishonorably from the Massachusetts State Police.
He was fired.
Not just for his text.
Proctor was fired.
Not just for his text, but for also admitting on the stand that he drove drunk in a car with another policeman who happens to be the brother of the owner of the house where John O'Keefe died. And that guy got so drunk that he forgot if he left his gun and badge in Trooper Proctor's car.
That's wicked bad.
Wicked bad.
Wicked bad. You know, it's also wicked good. His law brick is leave it to Bricka. That was horrible.
Leave it to Bricka.
Leave it to Bricka.
Leave it to Bricka.
Yeah, join us at the Brick Scale. You get that other exclusive podcast. What happened to you in the last episode?
I escaped death in a snowshoe race, Kevin, and I lived to see another day, thankfully. I learned that snowshoeing is really fucking hard, and I don't think I want to enter a snowshoe race again, but you'll hear all about it.
You don't have to.
I don't. I was one and done.
Yeah, that's good for you. Toby Ball's deep divers can actually watch and partake in the taping of his book club podcast. Toby, the next book you're talking about, and I believe you're recording April 1st, is called Eden Undone. And what is this book about?
Usually I have to hem and haw because I haven't started the book yet, but now I'm like fairly far into this. It's about a German couple who in the 30s, they want to kind of escape civilization, so they go to the Galapagos Islands and sort of are living as hermits.
Hermit Americans?
Hermit Germans. But then people find out that they're there, and that's kind of where I am now. One thing that they did before they left is the guy who's sort of the mover behind this, who's a doctor, had all his teeth removed, and instead of putting in like normal looking fake teeth, he put in stainless steel teeth.
Like Jaws?
Like Jaws from Moonraker and The Spy Who Loved Me. So there's that. And he didn't brush his teeth. He scrubbed them down with a wire brush. So
wow.
So do I. So another way you can support us, the easiest way too, is when you go to Amazon, stop first at our Amazon storefront. Just do it once.
Use that
link
on your way for your shopping.
Go to that link.
Bookmark that link and make that your Amazon page.
You need to go to Amazon.com. You go to Amazon.com/shop, which is doing /Crime Writers On, right? And you go there, you can not only make that your entry port to the world of shopping on Amazon, but you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, what are this week's Amazon recommendations?
Well, Kevin, I'm wearing it right now. Say what you want about Amazon, but some of those Amazon essentials are pretty freaking great. And a lot of them have sustainability features, like the pair of Amazon Essential tank tops that I am wearing one of right now. I have this new sort of like peachy pink sweater, but it's like loose weave, so you have to wear something underneath it. And I tried wearing a white tank top underneath it. It just like stuck out. And then I tried putting like a pink one. No. So I got this like soft plum one. Listen, Amazon Essentials tank tops, you can get like a 2-pack for $13. You can get a 5-pack for less than that amount per tank top. Anyway, I love them. They're very soft. They're stretchy. They're slimming. I really, really love the Amazon tank tops.
And your purchases help inform Toby Ball's deep cut recommendations. So, Toby, what are this week's deep cut recommendations?
I'm going to start off with the Handy Housewares round, non-scratch nylon, all-surface dish scouring pads, random colors.
Okay.
8-pad pack. You don't know what colors you're getting. It may work out with your kitchen. It may not.
Incredible.
My goodness. All right. Speaking of Russian roulette.
I like my sponges or whatever in random colors.
You do?
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is it random colors like you can get pink, blue, or red, or is it random colors like colors that you just wouldn't think of?
What colors? Wait, like what kind of sponges are these? What's the brand?
Handy Housewares.
Oh, I use those Scrub Daddy ones, and those are fun because they also have a face on them. No, I've never heard of those.
You have a face on your sponges?
Yeah, the Scrub Daddies are shaped like a face, and they actually have eyes and mouth. And I buy them on Amazon.
They have Scrub Mommy, too. I have Scrub Mommy.
But they last forever. Like, you need to buy them just one time. Anyway, go ahead, Toby.
All right, so Laura Geller, New York, which is all in capital letters. Quench in Tint, lightweight tinted moisturizer, porcelain /fair - sheer to light buildable coverage - national glow finish - lightwee.
Wow. It's a long description for some basically, it sounds like CC cream is what the person bought. All right, Kevin, before we end our business section, I have a very important question to ask you.
Yes.
Do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Manish Mystery and Teresa Green.
I know those names.
Bless you.
Bless you guys. Thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. Thank you for being listeners for a long-ass time and being evangelists for our show. I hope you share this episode with all your friends so they can hear us say your name on a podcast. Very exciting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Potential perk of joining our Patreon is your name could be said on this very podcast. Anyway, thank you so much for supporting us. Thanks to everyone who supports us on Patreon and is part of our Facebook group and subscribes to our newsletter, all that stuff. We love all of you. Kevin, does thus end our business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now.
Hi, this is Steve Buscemi, the actor. Well, now I'm an actor and podcast host from Piece of Work Entertainment and Campside Media in association with Olive Productions comes Big Time, an Apple original podcast. Each episode follows the story of one misfit with big dreams who isn't afraid to bend a few rules or take a shortcut to get there.
Well, who steals bees?
I was duped.
I'll shoot you in the leg.
This is Big Time. Follow and listen on Apple Podcasts.
Kevin.
Yes.
I hear we have a very exciting sponsor coming up now.
Oh, yeah, it's our good friends from Quince.
My best friends from Quince.
Who can resist the good things in life? I know not you, Rebecca.
Nope.
While luxury is enjoyable, it's not always affordable, and that's where Quince comes in. All right, I'm going to throw out the rest of the script.
All right.
You just gave me a very nice gift.
That's right.
And by nice gift, something I didn't ask for. You surprised me with a gift from Quince.
That's right. It's a flannel shirt, but it's not made from flannel. It's made from like sweatshirt jersey material. It is so cozy. It looks like a flannel.
Yeah.
Feels like a sweatshirt. You look fantastic, but you feel luxurious and comfortable, and you are gorgeous in that shirt.
Yeah, it's definitely the kind of thing you would expect from Quince because they offer such a range of high-quality items and prices within reach. In addition to that, you could get things like Mongolian cashmere sweaters for $50.
Sure.
And those washable silk tops and dresses, organic cotton sweaters, and you know what they even have? Jewelry.
And furniture.
I believe I saw gold bars. No, I'm not fooling. I think they have gold. I don't know why. Like, hey, Quince, you got to do you, right? But if I want a gold bar, I know where I'm getting it.
Or a beautiful sectional.
Yeah.
So give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime.
.com/crime
to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime.
Crime.
So, Kevin, who's the next sponsor for this fine program?
Oh, we're brought to you by HelloFresh.
HelloFresh.
Make deciding what's for dinner a lot easier with HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. It's easy to find time to eat well with 50 wholesome, hassle-free meals to choose from each week delivered to your door. Plus, HelloFresh's new ready-made meals go from the fridge to your fork in just 3 minutes with all the same high-quality ingredients and restaurant-worthy flavor you can expect from HelloFresh.
Kevin, there's a thing that people say about growing up, right? Growing up is just deciding what you're going to eat over and over and over again.
For the rest of your life,
That's hard, right?
Yes, it is very hard. Well, it can be hard, but it's easier for your family with HelloFresh because they put together great recipes and give you all. It's like they 3D printed these recipes.
Oh, wow.
They just come up and say, here's everything that you need. But sometimes, you don't even have enough time to get from one podcast recording to the next.
That's right.
I know a lot of people can relate to that situation.
Absolutely, much less decide what I'm going to eat later.
So these ready-made meals are fantastic. You pop them in the microwave and you've got some wonderful stuff to eat for your family right away.
So get up to 10 free meals and a free high-protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/HelloFreshPodcast.
HelloFresh Podcast.
One item per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on the first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/HelloFreshPodcast.
HelloFresh Podcast.
So, Toby, one figure we hear from a lot in this series is Bobby Beausoleil, who Errol Morris has phone interviews with in prison. And by the way, Errol Morris also told me he met Manson once when he went to prison to interview, who was the guy?
Ed Kemper.
Ed Kemper, yes. Anyway, but Beausoleil...
The neck fucker.
That's true. If you watched Mindhunter, you know that.
About him being that.
That's right. So what do you think about Beausoleil? Do you want to remind folks who he is and tell us what you think about him in this documentary?
So Beausoleil is kind of interesting in that he was one of the Manson followers who actually had other stuff kind of going on. Like Beausoleil, he was a musician. I don't know a whole lot about that, but he was also an actor. I think he's best known, this guy, Kenneth Anger, if you've heard of him, he's like an independent sort of filmmaker who is really provocative and sort of on the edge of things. But he made 2 movies that you usually kind of see together. One's called like Incantation for My Demon Brother. And the other one is called Scorpio Rising. So, unlike most of these people who are like living on the ranch or in the van or whatever part of the Manson timeline, they were attached to Manson. Like Beausoleil actually had other stuff going on, and I think was important to Manson for that reason, where he could be a connection, particularly with the music world. So they kind of, I guess, maybe mention it in this, but I think for the most part, people nowadays, they do talk about how the Sharon Tate murders happened the day after Beausoleil was arrested for killing Gary Hinman. And most people think that they're committed to provide some cover for Beausoleil. There's sort of copycat crimes to make it seem like Beausoleil hadn't killed Hinman.
I showed up at Spawn Ranch just for a visit. Charlie pulled me aside and he told me that he had killed a Black Panther. His name is Bernard Crowe. He was a low-rent drug dealer in Los Angeles.
I think it might be the last thing that's said in the whole documentary. If not, it's one of the last things where he basically says at the end that like this idea that Manson was a mastermind or a genius is just kind of laughable, that if you actually take a look at his actions and stuff, it was just mistake after mistake after mistake. And that, it's one of those, the legend is much bigger than the actuality, which is that he was, kind of an uneducated, kind of bumbling guy, but who was able to convince a bunch of people to follow him.
Yeah. So, Kevin, there is this solid theory that Errol Morris said that he kind of buys and that, is talked about in the documentary, that Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski's home was the former home of a record producer that had an interaction with Manson, and that he was a likely target. And this kind of goes along with this idea that Errol Morris and Toby also just said, that most crimes are just dumb, and this is one of those crimes. Like, it's just a sloppy, ugly crime.
I don't know, like, where different people come down on, as far as the lore of Manson, on why this house on Cielo Drive was selected. And, to me, it just seems very clear that because the previous owner was somebody that Manson had an axe to grind against, this music producer who he had been working with, but then kind of dumped him as things just kind of happened in the entertainment world, that he was the target, right? Manson wasn't there directing people to say, no, he wasn't there to like say, no, these are the wrong people. And certainly like Sharon Tate as a deliberate target, like, is that who you would kill to incite a race war? And then, piggies and Helter Skelter and all this other stuff around the house. I don't know. Is that unclear as to why the house, are people still, I think that if this happened today and I were a cop, and I found that out, that's an investigative path that I would go down pretty hard and fast, right? But I don't know. This is one of those crimes that has been so covered and looked at from so many different angles that I think there are people that have like different theories about why this house and why that thing and all this other stuff. But for me,
what do you make of the thought that it is just that it's just dumb? Those murders were essentially a mistake. Like, not a mistake, like they obviously killed them on purpose, but like those murders weren't supposed to be who was killed.
Yeah, that's what I don't think those people were, anybody there was the actual target. And I don't think it was random spree killing. I think that they went there looking for somebody else, or not knowing they were looking for somebody else, and were put up to it. But I think the major theme, or the question that runs through this whole documentary is, how could Manson have convinced these people to do that?
Right.
Anyway, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think that is why we continue to hear these stories and these documentaries and books about Charles Manson, because it's like you see the videos of the people crawling on all fours on the street. You see them going to court with like the X's drawn on their forehead,
carved into their foreheads.
Like literally, you hear these people talk about helping commit heinous murders. And you're like, how did this person get that level of control over these other people to get them to do this? And I think that's the thing that you keep coming back to that makes you like, why are we still hearing about Charles Manson? I think because it's hard to wrap your head around how he did that. And I know we hear about cults and we hear about but something about this particular crime, you want an answer. And I don't think we're going to get an answer. So that's why we keep coming back to it.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason we'll never have an answer is because Manson was unable to ever put together a sentence that wasn't completely bizarre after he was arrested. Like, he was certainly playing a lot of games with words, but he also, in my mind, I think both things can be true. I think that, if he had interactions with Dr. Jolly, that maybe he did. Maybe that was his introduction into the mind-altering stuff around LSD. And then maybe because of his charisma, a lot of people followed him and they all did LSD. It wasn't necessarily some magical mind control thing. It was that they were all high as fuck. And he was like, go do this. And they're like, it seems like a good idea. Let's go do this. Like, I think both things can be true. Toby, do you have this sense that like, there isn't like a definitive thing, that it could be that multiple things happened here? Yeah,
I mean, it could. I mean, I've got my own, like, I kind of...
Let's hear Toby's. I want to hear Toby's theory. Because I bet Toby's theory is more believable than some of the other theories we've heard.
Well, part of it, if you listen to the last episode of Rip Current, I lay it out in 45 minutes. But it's basically, when people talk about brainwashing, and they do, I can't remember the exact quote that I think O'Neill says something about, how did they change their way of thinking, their morals, etc. And I think part of the problem maybe for him, if there is a problem, is that he's kind of looking at this in isolation and just trying to figure it out. And I think if you expand the scope a little bit and look at other situations in which things like this happened, you're able to get a better sense of what the patterns are. And then when it comes down to Manson, he was aided by giving these people tons of acid. And he would not take acid, and he would give them acid, and he would just take a normal piece of paper. So he would be lucid while everybody else was just completely tripping, and just fed them this mythology that they kind of semi-believe. So anyway, there's stuff like with Pavlov's dogs. There's some other things that happen with his dogs other than the salivating that kind of point toward this kind of conditioning in people when they go through traumatic experiences, how their personalities become malleable and change. So anyway, I think there's a lot of things that don't require CIA mind control programs to explain people doing extreme things.
Yeah, and we've seen plenty of cult leaders get people to do stuff without LSD. And I mean, Manson is not like the prototypical cult leader, but, a lot of what the Manson family did and the way they lived, kind of fits that mold. And always like, well, why would these hippies come out and live on this ranch and have sex and do drugs? I mean, it's kind of a question that answers itself, right? I mean,
can I go on a ranch and have sex and do drugs?
Sure.
Well, what was the line they said? They wanted to like get drugs, get fucked, and get food or something?
Yeah, sounds pretty good. Much. So there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs right there. But also, I mean, think for O'Neill, he has been chasing this theory for decades. And even he admits that he really can't place Jolly and Manson together. And Errol Morris also at one point kind of confronts him saying, this is really good, but I don't know if this is real.
MK Ultra, I don't even know what to make of it. It seems to me that they wanted to achieve certain objectives. The idea of creating a Manchurian candidate is this dream. But were they ever able to come even close to creating that? I somehow don't think so.
So for O'Neill, it is never going to be like it didn't happen. It's always going to be, well, I just haven't found all the evidence yet.
This is what it made me think about. And I don't mean to tie it back to my favorite thing happening in the world right now, but we've been watching the Karen Reed trial stuff really closely, right, Kevin? And in that case, the Commonwealth is telling a story about what they think definitely happened. I don't even think they think that is what happened, right? But they've crafted a narrative, they've crafted a story, and they are not fucking budging from that story. And Bugliosi crafted a story that was very sexy, right? It involved the Beatles, it involved all these things that were like just words. He's cherry picks these ideas from the crimes, right? Helter Skelter written on the wall, whatever. And this is what it means. And he crafted the story. I don't necessarily buy that the whole time he was like, I'm going to make money from this. I do buy that he was trying to win a case. and that it worked. And I think that, O'Neill also has a story. It's like one of the underlying questions of this is it okay to put your own story on a thing when it's unknowable? And that's kind of like nothing in this is knowable, right? Nothing's knowable.
And it never will be, and that's the thing.
That's right.
"132 rooms, 157 suspects, one dead body, one wildly eccentric detective, one disastrous state dinner, and at the center of it all, a case unlike any other." The new Netflix series The Residence is a screwball whodunit set in the White House. From Shondaland, the series features an all-star cast led by Uzo Aduba as Cordelia Cupp, the most sought-after detective in the world. Watch The Residence, March 20th, only on Netflix. Charlie Heller is the CIA's most brilliant computer analyst, whose life is turned upside down when his wife is murdered in a terrorist attack. Wrought with grief, Charlie decides her killers must pay. Without any field experience, Charlie must trek the globe and use his biggest weapon, his intelligence, to enact his revenge, because the most unexpected threat is an amateur. Starring Academy Award winner Rami Malek and Academy Award nominee Lawrence Fishburne, The Amateur, rated PG-13. Only in theaters and IMAX April 11th.
Hear that? It's SpringFest savings calling your name, only at Lowe's. Right now, get a free Select Ego 56-volt battery when you buy a Select Ego trimmer, blower, or mower. Plus, get your choice of any 2 bags of Miracle-Gro organic soil mix for only $16. Shop these can't-miss deals in-store or online today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/2. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Excludes Hawaii.
Instacart is here to keep you on the couch this basketball season. With pre-game rituals and post-game interviews, it's hard to find time for everything else. Let Instacart handle your game day snacks or weekly restocks with delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Because it's bad luck to be hungry on game day. Download the Instacart app today and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply for 3 orders in 14 days. Excludes restaurants.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out Chaos, The Manson Murders on Netflix? Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down for Chaos?
I'm going to go mild thumbs up on this. And I think I might be like slightly tainted because the other review we did this week was something that I was just like over the top about.
Spectacular,
that I loved so much. I think for me, the reason I'm going mild thumbs up, there was some interesting parts in this with regard to the journalist who wrote the book about Manson and other theories. But I also felt like there was a lot of kind of rehashing of the Charles Manson case, which we've seen before. So I was just kind of like, did we really need another Charles Manson documentary? I mean, maybe. It's interesting. There are some new bits of information here. There are some new theories. There's some different perspectives. It was very interesting. I liked the way it was structured. Had a really interesting format, like the chapters and the graphics and, input from different people. But, I wasn't as blown away as I thought I might be. So that's why I'm going mild thumbs up.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for Chaos?
So I'm a thumbs up on this. I just responding to what Laura was saying about there's a fair amount of it's like a recap of Manson stuff that most people are interested already know. Like, again, when I was doing Rip Current, I had to do an episode plus about Manson stuff. It's hard, man, because everything's covered. It's covered in so many things. But if people don't know and you're trying to tell a story that has to do with Manson, you have to find some way to get it across in a way that's either super, super quick or have like a slightly different take or a slightly different angle in order to get the facts across. I don't know. I thought that Errol Morris did a pretty good job of keeping it sort of visually interesting. It's funny, like we used a lot of the same audio. Like he was going through stuff. I was like, oh, I know what that's from the ABC coverage on August 7th. So, the author, this guy, Tom O'Neill, who wrote the book Chaos, which is a wild book, by the way. I think the book is better than this documentary is. I don't think he's right about most of this stuff, but I think sort of his thought process and just the different parts of history he kind of pulls together to kind of weave this, what is in the most literal sense of the word, a conspiracy that he's trying to kind of weave around the Manson killings. It's pretty interesting, and you can do something interesting that can be wrong, and that's fine. So I liked it. It's also something that I've been kind of immersed in for a couple of years. So I think it was also kind of interesting to see somebody else's take on things. But again, I liked it. I give it a thumbs up.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, a mild thumbs up on this. I thought technically it was done pretty well, visually interesting. I don't really know if I buy, I don't buy the premise that the CIA was somehow involved with Manson. I think Tom O'Neill is the subject of this, who's been chasing this story for 20 years. Doesn't really bring the receipts on either a connection, nor that, he tries to disparage like some of the findings of Helter Skelter, which is the definitive account of the Manson murders, other than saying some things like didn't make sense. Doesn't really show that. So it's sort of a high bar, because even though MK Ultra was a real thing, connecting it to something like this, you have to have more than just innuendo, but it's an interesting look at the innuendo. So for me, I'm going to go a mild thumbs up.
I'm going thumbs up, and there's just like something I think that I want to remind our audience of. These murders happened 55 years ago. There are a lot of people who know the name Charles Manson because he died in like 2017 or whatever, but don't know anything except that he's a real bad guy who was in prison and had a swastika carved on his forehead and talked kind of crazy, and like he's a figure in pop culture.
And he killed people.
But yeah, people think he killed people. People don't really, I think we underestimate the sort of lack of basic knowledge of crime that people have who are younger than we are. If I said the name John Wayne Gacy to a 19-year-old, I would have to tell them all the stuff about John Wayne Gacy, right? And I only know that because I saw a TV movie about it when I was a kid. Like, there's a lot of mistranslation that goes on in these stories. Ted Bundy is an incredibly good example of that. Ted Bundy gets... Somebody who doesn't know a lot about it is like, he was handsome, he was charismatic, he was smart, and women loved him, and he was secretly a murderer. It's nothing like what actually happened with Ted Bundy. He was on the run. He was a criminal. He was not that good looking. He was not that smart. He failed out of law school almost. And it's like, he's not the legend. And so I think that, this is a good example of, in the hands of a skilled person, a story told well to people who may not have seen it before. So I always try to look at things through that lens. And I've come to appreciate murkiness in the hands of somebody who's doing it well. And this thing is very murky. It does not make a strong case for a thing. So you should go into it knowing that. You shouldn't come into it thinking like I did with the Jared Kobeck book, like he's going to solve something. Like, it's not that. So if you're expecting that, you're not going to get that. But if you like a story that's well told and explores the murk of a prosecution, of the legend of a true crime story, of alternative theories, you'll probably like this. So I'm giving Chaos a thumbs up. All right, Laura Bricker, before we end the podcast, I have a very important question for you. Do you have a cat of the week this week?
This comes to us from Sarah Lynn Jones. Sarah Lynn Jones was listening to the podcast that I need to listen to next, The Final Days of Sergeant Tibbs.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah submitted, along with, her thoughts on the Sergeant Tibbs podcast, some well-loved kitties that are part of the family for attention, Baby Meower and the ever-tolerant Mulder.
Oh, Mulder.
Meower, Baby Meower, and Mulder. And a reminder from Sarah that, yes, I need to get walking and listen to the Sergeant Tibbs podcast because everybody around me is talking about it.
It's only 90 minutes long, Laura. It's 4 episodes and it's like totals 90 minutes. You get through very quickly.
I know.
All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you and pitch any kind of animal to be Cat of the Week, how can they find you?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Instagram and Blue Sky, or you can submit through our Facebook discussion group or the Brichter Scale.
That's right. You can also email us at crimewriterson@gmail.com. So many ways to submit your animals. Toby Ball, how can you be found online?
At Toby Ball NH on the Blue Sky.
And of course, you should listen to Rip Current if you want to hear more about what Toby thinks about all of this stuff. Kevin Flynn, how can you be found?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
And you can find me everywhere at Reb Lavoie. You should also join our Patreon. You can listen to the Readathon, you can listen to the Crime Writers on After Show, and all the other stuff we make there. Our theme song was composed and performed by Tyler Gibbons. And by the way, our handle everywhere is at Crime Writers On. Our line editor is the terrific Livy Burdett. The EP for this show is Kevin. This show is recorded in Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we also have marionettes made to look like Charles Manson. No, really, we do. We do, really. Right, Kevin?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
On behalf of all the crime
Pulling
writers,
the strings.
Thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Lara's got a That's
a Scrub Daddy.
You use things with like holes, like pre-made holes in them?
Yes.
The Scrub Daddy's incredible because it's firm when it's drier and it gets really soft when it's wet. That's the whole, and you can wash them in the dishwasher. Right? They're incredible. Yes.
Firm when dry, soft when wet.
That's right.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure Toby understood what the genius of the Scrub Daddy or Scrub Mommy or whatever that was.
So I just look at that and I think
weird.
That there's going to be all kinds of like junk that's going to get stuck in those little holes, and you're going to have to like clean it out with a toothbrush or something.
You'd be amazed.
I'd be amazed. Really. Like the technology is better than I'm thinking.
I know what I'm getting you for Christmas next year.
Jesus Christ. Make sure they're in random colors though.
In crime media. Shop with Rakuten and you'll get it. What's it? It's the best deal, the highest cash back, the most savings on your shopping. So join Rakuten and start getting cash back at Nike, Expedia, Bloomingdale's, and other stores you love. You can even stack sales on top of cash back. Just start your shopping with Rakuten to save money at over 3,500 stores. Join for free at Rakuten.com or get the Rakuten app. That's RAKUTEN.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.